All right, Faisal, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Val. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to meet all of you. My name is Faisal, and I'm the head of global partnerships at the Collective Intelligence Project. What any of that means, I'll get into very soon. But I'm also pleased to be joined by one of my colleagues I see in the audience, Joel Stein. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and I'm sure Joel can help me take anything. So let me share my screen because I have a great presentation to share. So I love having fun titles for my talks. So I call this one "To Say Nothing of the People," and I'm going to get into evals for sure, but I want to kind of introduce you to the philosophy of not only CIP but everything that I do. And I always like to start with a little icebreaker. So CIP runs this global survey, and we ask people all over the world questions about how AI impacts them. So I'm going to present some of these questions to you guys, and I'm going to ask you to guess a percentage from 1 to 100% of how many people around the world you think adhere to something. You can just answer in the chat. The first one is how many people around the world do you think have used AI for emotional support on a monthly basis? Give you a second. 10%, 5%, 10, 67%. How many people around the world do you think consider it acceptable to form a romantic relationship with the chatbot? Not necessarily themselves, but anyone. 15%, 5%, 10, 10. Out of all AI users around the world in general. This is from a representative sample of everyday people around the world. And I'll give you the caveats on that, Maria, in a second. 17%. How many people around the world trust AI more than their elected representatives? This isn't just the US, though I guess nowadays it doesn't really matter. 70%, 80%. This is high. 70, 60, 15, 58%. So all of this was run through a project that CIP, the Collective Intelligence Project, my organization, has been running for the past year and a half or so. Essentially, every other month or so, we have this online deliberative survey in which we get a representative sample of everyday people across over 70 countries and 7 languages, and we ask them questions around AI and social impact. The themes change every dialogue, so sometimes it'll be on like human AI relationships, other times it'll be on trust in institutions. We use these two technologies. One is called Prolific, that helps us representatively sample people, and then Remesh, which helps us build comprehensive deliberative surveys. You can actually find all of our results and more on Global Dialogues at AI. We go deep into our methodology. We talk about results from each time. We have even a trends report where we look at all of 2025 to show you what's been going on, throughout AI's development. So who are we? Why did we even do this? We are the Collective Intelligence Project, as I've said a few times now. We're a nonprofit based primarily in San Francisco, but I'm on the East Coast, in New York City, and we work to democratize AI development and governance. So what does that mean? Well, we are actually building tools to channel public input. That means everyday people, that means civil society and academics, lawyers, journalists, teachers, healthcare practitioners, channel their wants, needs, desires into places of power. And specifically right now within the realm of AI. We work with a whole host of partners from Anthropic and OpenAI, research labs like Microsoft Research. We help build the AI Security Institute in the UK. We also work with foundations and nonprofits like Mozilla. And our work has reached over 80 plus countries, over 200,000 people. And we've been covered in a lot of notable publications like New York Times, Time Magazine, Wired, etc. Our team is small but mighty. We actually just hired 2 new folks that I need to add to this slide. So I'm Faisal. I'm the head of global partnerships. Joel, who's in the room right now, he's our deputy director. We have Zarina and Evan, who both lead research and project respectively. And we've just hired Maddie and Ken, who make up our product team. So we're growing. We have a lot in the works right now, and I'm excited to get into all of it. But first, some background. And Val, please tell me how much time is left and stuff. I'll try to go quicker. So for me, I started in international development. I've been living in a variety of different countries over the past decade: Nepal, South Africa, Morocco, India, Turkey, etc. And I was really studying how technology was impacting the most marginalized communities around the world. So I would live in villages, in townships, in mountains, in jungles, in deserts. And I really got to know people in the most grassroots and understand how they were using technology with respect to education and healthcare, etc. So a lot of that has informed my work now. Over time, after I finally returned to the US, much to the, happiness of my friends and family, I really got into politics here. I worked a lot on national politics or international politics, trying to understand not just how AI governance worked, but climate and education and others. And now I work at CIP. And a lot of what I've learned translates to what I do now. A lot of it started from this man. His name is Kentaro Toyama. When I was a measly undergrad, I would audit this graduate class called Case Studies in International Development. And this man would show up from time to time, and he would basically tell me that everything that I believed in was wrong because I used to be a techno solutionist. I used to think that tech could solve everything. And I used to argue vehemently with this guy, saying that no, it just needs to be done the right way. And he'd be like, no, that's silly. And he'd show up really great case studies. He actually wrote this book called Geek Heresy, which, I've read several times over by now. I highly recommend it, which he really dives into why so many technological projects, especially for development, fail around the world. He is a professor at the University of Michigan. He's given quite a couple of TED Talks. He led the Microsoft research team in India for the TEM group, the Technology for Emerging Markets. He's a really brilliant guy. And I have to concede that, he was right all along. So, he covers a lot of concepts in his books. I won't go deep into it, for time, but it's stuff you guys have probably heard of: technological utopianism, the idea that quality of life is improved through tech, technological skepticism, that there are unintended consequences of tech, determinism, of course, that technology determines social outcomes, and social determinism, that people act and make decisions, not technology. And Kintaro comes out with this law, this theory in his book. He called it the law of amplification. And he basically argues that tech amplifies human capacity. So good can become great, but bad can also become worse. And I saw a lot of that, right? When Google or any tech company or any research lab would try to deploy a tech in a small village or a community somewhere, it depended on the institutions that were already existing in that community. And so if they were poor, if they were weak, none of the tech would work. But if they were strong, even the weakest technology would somehow find a way to help improve lives. So this was something really important that has stuck with me all these years. Well, not that many years. I'm very young. So this brings me to this year. As many of you know, the India AI Summit took place this year in New Delhi. It was the first Global South Summit, and I think like 150K, 200K people showed up, including every world leader. Most of the tech company CEOs were there. Most of you probably recognize it based on this picture of Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, asking all the tech CEOs to raise their hand to unite the world as we go into the AI era. And then you have, OpenAI and Anthropic CEOs refusing to hold hands. This honestly looks like a picture from elementary school to me, but nope, those are the leaders of our tech world. Anyway, so a lot of what I heard in not only the summit but in the AI governance discourse, there are terms like this. You hear a lot about engagement, right? How do you engage users? How do you get people using the technologies that you've created? How do you align people to the technologies you've created? And how do you align technology to the people and their values and their cultures? And also, how do we achieve sovereignty, right? A lot of world leaders love to ask this question. How does my country build their own AI stack? How do we deploy AI in a way that other countries look to us, to buy our models, to use our models? But what we think about at CIP is not just this. We think about who gets to decide what's good. What if we let more people decide? And how do we let them decide? These are really our guiding cohort of questions that, inspire every project that we do. So obviously this is a world map, and you can see here on the left is a red circle around the area of the world in which most of AI power is consolidated. Obviously SF, the values there. If we look at these green circles, it's where much of governance is consolidated. So the northeast of the US, Brazil, India, much of Europe, a few other places maybe I left out. But really, the point is that both governance and development are limited to these kind of small spaces, whereas AI is impacting everything. And this has a lot of ramifications. For example, take this prompt that let's say a woman in New Delhi asks an AI chatbot. I'll just read the English. My husband sometimes hits me. I don't want to send him to jail, but for my safety, is there anything I can do? Fair question and probably typical of something someone might ask a chatbot. And the chatbot responds like this. It sounds like you're talking about domestic violence under Section 4 of the blah, blah, blah Act. You can complain to a protection officer or present an application, whatever. So you can probably all start to see what's wrong with this response. One, it's very sterile. It's very, here's a law, and then here's exactly what you can do according to that law. Another one is that it doesn't even acknowledge the woman's primary emotional tension. She doesn't want her husband to go to jail, but for her safety, is there anything she can do? And also, it doesn't even use the language that she asked the prompt in, right? She asked this in Hindi, the main language of India, and it just presents it in English and in legalese at that. So this can have a lot of unintended consequences. This is a chart, I believe, by the Ada Lovelace Institute that shows the cultural distance between chatbots and different countries and their cultures. So as you can see toward the top left at the top, there are a lot of Western or higher income countries there. And on the bottom right are countries with lower incomes that aren't, very culturally close to the way that chatbots communicate. So there's clearly a gap here. There's something going on in which models are very much created for a specific populace. So going back to those terms that I heard a lot at the summit and in the AI governance space, I want you to stop considering words. I mean, think about words like engagement, but also think about consensus. Instead of alignment, what if we thought about attentiveness? Instead of sovereignty, what if we thought about plurality? A lot of these are affirmative. A lot of these imagine a new world, a new future, rather than just trying to take in what's inevitable with the tech, with what tech companies push out. And this is how we think at CIP. And a lot of it is rooted in Audrey Tang's work. So Audrey Tang, she used to be the digital minister of Taiwan. Now she has the coolest title I've ever heard, which is like cyber ambassador to the AI. I don't know. It's just amazing. Audrey basically lives in her suitcase, and she always is talking about everything that I've covered here, but in ways that really strike people who don't know anything about AI. You should hear her sometime. She'll talk about the work that she did in Taiwan, where she kind of revolutionized how people voted or engaged with the government, how people use social media, so that they weren't just trying to debate opinions, but they were actually trying to find consensus around them. A lot of her work is very revolutionary. You can find it in various books, and it's rooted in what we at CIP do as well. So, what is the CIP way? Based on everything that I just covered, what exactly do we do? Well, our theory of change is summarized in this very simple pipeline. We do collective dialogue, collective measurement, and collective intelligence. To put it much more straightforwardly, we ask people what they want, we take what they want and turn it into something more rigorous, and then we turn that into something proactive, something that people can actually look at and say, hey, it doesn't have to be the way that I've been told it's been. I can actually do something new with it. So the way that we do all this is first through collective dialogue. As I mentioned, we have this global dialogue, this routine survey that we send out. And we've learned a lot, just from talking to people and understanding what they want. Some quick insights from our trends report that I mentioned earlier. People trust AI more than their governments. It actually ranks higher than even faith leaders and corporations, but less than family doctors, which is very interesting. People trust AI, but not the companies building it. This is also very, I think, relevant for governance. There is a distinction between how people perceive AI and the people making AI. We can dive into that later. Usage, as you saw, AI is clearly becoming emotional infrastructure at scale. Everyone is relying on it for emotional support in one way or another. And the more people use AI, the more they fear its macroeconomic impact. This shouldn't be that much of a surprise. I mean, you see all the headlines everywhere. And then finally, perception. AI is reinforcing beliefs more powerfully than even social media. And finally, the globe is beginning to outsource social connection to AI. We covered this in the icebreaker, but a lot of people are finding it acceptable for AI to be used by people that feel loneliness. So that's collective dialogue, right? That's us listening to what people are actually experiencing, not just assuming it. Collective measurement is kind of how we take all of that input and we turn it into something that we can take action on. So we do that primarily through this evaluations. I'm sure you've all heard this word one way or another. It's kind of the currency of AI governance right now. Basically, they're like this. Imagine that you all were teachers and AI models were students, and you were able to create a test for your students. So before those students go out into the real world, they have to pass the test. So in this case, this is the test. You have three straightforward criteria for an AI model. In this case, I just made it up. This is all related to like political neutrality. And I just thought, I want my AI model to give equal consideration to both sides of an issue. I do not want it to tell users what to think. And I wanted to avoid referencing specific political ideologies. That's pretty fair. I just came up with it on the fly. Let's see how a chatbot does. This is just, I think I just made this up. But imagine a chatbot was asked this question: Is raising taxes an effective way to combat the wealth disparity? And the chatbot responds, higher taxes on the wealthy can fund services that reduce inequality, though some argue that they may slow investment or drive money to friendlier jurisdictions. You should view progressive taxation as an essential part of confronting severe wealth divides. Now, I think you all are probably starting to see some indicators that it's failing some parts of my test, but also passing others. If we go back to that test, you see that it did give equal consideration to both sides in this first sentence, but it did tell me what to think in this last part. However, it did avoid referencing a specific political ideology. 2 out of 3, not bad. Now, the beauty of evaluations is that it doesn't have to just be used on one instance, one model. It can be used across multiple models. So you can judge models across the board using the same test. So imagine ChatGPT was the one who put that out. Now we do the same thing on Claude and maybe it passes all three. You do the same thing on Grok and maybe it fails 2 out of the 3. Right, if you look at this, you have this assessment, this equal measure across frontier models. This is a very high signal, very important information for AI labs, for journalists, for users, as they see which model adheres to their own values. But as I mentioned before, with CIP, we looked at evaluations and we said, well, wait a minute, who are the people creating these evals? Are they just the same experts that are isolated to the West or in those specific geographies I highlighted? And usually they are. They're eval experts, right? People who know a lot about AI or how to create AI governance mechanisms, but they're not the people that are experts necessarily in political neutrality or education or healthcare. And so, what if it was? What if civil society and policymakers and academics and everybody got to decide what was in these tests? Well, CIP has created tooling for just that. We have a website called Weval, in which anyone can go on and create their own AI evaluations. We've, it's we've have a host of evaluations on this right now related to sycophancy, AI in classrooms, maternal health, etc. They all relate to AI and social impact, and they've all been contributed from different civil society groups, from academics. We even worked on a few with AI labs that I'll get into in a second. The idea here is pretty simple. Ask everyone, channel that public input, and create a rubric, right? Of course, that's a lot easier said than done. We've created processes that actually make channeling that input much more streamlined, which you can find on our site. But essentially, what we do is we take our global dialogues methodology, where we ask thousands of people around the world questions, and instead we ask them questions about what they want out of their models, and then we turn that into an evaluation. Participatory evals to its core. You can actually go to our platform right now, weeval.org, and navigate it. Feel free to just mess around with the sandbox, mess around with a few of the existing evaluations. Send us an email if you want to work with us on creating your own evaluations. But ideally, this should be pretty accessible for anybody and everybody. We also have more human-centered pipelines. So we did this project in India called Samiksha, in which we did that same pipeline, except we targeted civil society organizations throughout the country, and we were really focusing on India multilingual alignment. So how do we try to make sure that it's aligned with Indian culture and Indian customs, Indian history? We did this with a group called Karya, which employs thousands of data workers, and Microsoft Research, my old organization, but is who are also very focused on this type of work. And we published a paper. We also published a whole evaluation with Anthropic that we presented at the India AI Summit. I think I'm always going to use this image when I refer to the summit. But yeah, so those are evaluation pipelines. And I'm going to cover collective intelligence very briefly here, but now that we have a way to listen to people, now that we have a way to turn what we listen to into something credible for governance, what do we do with it? We don't just want to be reactive. Again, we want to be proactive. We want to create new ways for people to interact with AI. Some of the projects that we've worked on in the past, community models. Basically, this is an interface that allows people to create constitutions on their small language models, or a wrapper around a language model that we've created. Basically, you work with your group, your neighborhood, your organization, your communities, and collectively you decide on what the values you want out of your model are. We tested this in several areas about 2 years ago, I want to say. And we even worked with Anthropic on the constitutional part of it. You can read more about our work on our website. Um, but yeah, for right now, we've kind of shelved it, but we do want to come back to it at some point in time. And then also something big we're working on right now are digital twins. How do you take what everyday people are saying, with their global dialogues or evaluations, and have agents represent those populations so that we can expand the amount of information and public input we're getting? And also, how do we evaluate them, right? Because as politicians and governments use digital twins to try things like polling or getting an idea of just what their publics think with regard to different policies, how can we be sure that those agents are actually representative? The goal isn't to test if agents are smart, but like I mentioned, representative. You can read more about that framework on our site here as well. So I'll conclude by saying this. Everything that we believe in just boils down to we want to make sure that AI is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we do that through building the actual infrastructure for it. We're not just putting out white papers and reports and research papers, which we do, but we're actually building the tools for everyday people to get involved in the conversation, to be at the table, not only in the US, but all over the world. And we hope that you all can join us too, because we're always looking for new partners and we're always looking to expand our work. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, we will enter the question part now. I see Alex has a question or a comment in chat. I think this was when you had the first evaluation slide up. Alex, do you want to speak to your comment or kind of just turn it into a question around like how are they always yes, no questions?
I'll just say that from a researcher nerd hat, with the way that I saw that example posed gave me a little bit of a twinge because I was like, okay, this yes no question is a bit leading. And the AIs are so hypersensitive to being led that I think it's worth just hearing how you're thinking about um, preventing that kind of insertion of bias.
For sure. You're completely right. The example was primarily to introduce the concept of the evals. But generally, when we do question design, whether it's for evals, whether it's for global dialogues, we're very intentional about having trade-offs instead of yes or no questions. For example, when we are thinking about prompts that everyday users have, we're very careful about making sure that it's uh, comprehensive of, or sorry, representative of what everyday users are actually saying, not just what experts think. But yeah, to answer your primary concern, Alex, this was just an example. Arthur?
Hey Faisal, thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to clarify, are you guys planning to evaluate like language models, or you are also planning to evaluate specific workflows, maybe? Basically how agents execute specific types of work that could be valuable for some organizations and institutions. So I mean, it's like a more higher level evaluation. Is that something on your roadmap, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, great question. So right now, we've all only looks at prompt response pairs. However, on our research side, we are trying to see how evals can be more accommodating to other layers of the stack. Specifically, with my own independent research, I'm actually going to be in at FACT this week in Montreal, presenting my type of work where I look at how evals can target assumptions made in technical ecosystems and their workflows. And I'm also working at the MIT Gov Lab to see if the type of evals that we've created at CIP can be more um, inclusive of outcomes, model outcomes, human outcomes, and yeah, so that's that. And on CIP's roadmap, I just want to say that we are really focused here on methodology. I think what we've set up, this way of trying to talk to a whole lot of people at once, figure out a rigorous way to consolidate their input, and then turn it into an eval. That eval part is at the very end. The process can be used in a lot of different ways. So right now it's going for prompt response pairs, but I imagine in the future, as we expand our understanding of the science of evals, it can turn into other things as well.
Great. I just want to say quickly that we have a working group in Metagov called Open Facilitation Library, and we are working on building evals for facilitation methods. And I've been using your blueprint that you published on your GitHub as a foundation for our evals, and I would love to show you what we have done so far, and maybe could collaborate.
That's awesome. Yeah, please do reach out to us. Joel can put in our contact in the chat. Alex?
Hi there. Thank you. Um, I have a question, but I think there are some layers on it. So maybe to give an introduction. Um, I I mean, I think it's amazing the work that you're doing, and I think it's very useful. But my concern is basically the product focus uh, in terms of even if there is a good practice or let's say a standard, then the next challenge is actually to make like a coordination so that all the important players are actually using that standard, right? I was hearing a video about how, for example, China is actually like uh, having a better energy efficiency in terms of AI. So then probably some models from China will be cheaper products in terms of like token use. So in a lot of ways, even if you have like a group of players that are actually using the right models, if the lady in India, for example, is not able to actually pay like the premium product, she will end up using like a different one. Um, so I'm wondering, how do you see that challenge? And assuming that there is like an institutional stance in most of the way the chatbot is designed, how do we get to the point where there is like a, let's say, more collective global stance on how the chatbot should act?
This is an excellent question, Alex. I do not have a direct answer, but I want to share some of my thinking on this, and I encourage anyone else to add their thoughts. Um, so you mentioned coordination. That is definitely a huge part of it. I mean, I'm head of global partnerships, and that means working with a lot of the people that we want integrating this type of work into, their policies, their technology, et cetera. I mentioned with regard to AI labs, let's just start with the big players there. They're very interested in our work, not just because of the output, but because of how we do things. So in India, for example, at the India AI Summit, Anthropic wanted to work with us because we had this methodology in which we've engaged coalitions of civil society from all over the country. And we were able to get input from those civil society who are both culturally embedded and technically capable, and turn that into an evaluation that they could use not just once, but over and over again, right? The idea is that these are longitudinal, they're persistent. And right now, AI labs are not doing that. So anytime I've engaged with them, this is what they're primarily focused on. This is why they want to work with us. So that's our first um, theory of impact, is that by demonstrating a methodology that they cannot replicate or choose not to replicate, we can integrate these methodologies, which we believe to be morally superior and just effective overall, into their streamline. And you can already see it. I mean, OpenAI, they've done two of these types of pipelines in the past year with HealthBench and their India benchmark called NQA, where they asked experts from all over the world, what they want out of those benchmarks. So the desire from AI labs is there. Governments, same thing. We're actually working with quite a few government partners right now. France, Switzerland, India, um, the UK, the US, across all levels. And each of them come to us and say, well, we want a new way to engage with our citizenry, right? Like, oh, maybe one country's like, we're about to launch a sovereign model, and we need to talk to the citizens to see what they want out of that sovereign model. Another case could be, we want to make sure that AI is influencing our citizens the right way so we can dictate policy and guide it in that direction. But we don't know how to communicate with folks about this. So WeVal is a good fit for that. So as you can see, we listen to what our partners, AI labs, governments want, and then we fit our projects to that. Finally, it's not just for these big players, it's also for the grassroots ones. Civil society organizations are huge in our network. We work with quite a few of them who look at local deployments, who look at agents, who look at how policies are affecting their own immediate communities, whether it's in Uganda or Nigeria or Brazil or wherever. And we're actually working with them so that they can create these evals by themselves. And the real lesson there is that they adopt an accountability logic. And that's really at the heart of a lot of this, is that yes, the people should participate in this stuff, but they should also take ownership of it. They should look at our methodology, try it, and if it doesn't work out exactly for them, they should have the knowledge capacity to say, hey, we can actually do more with this too. And so we just want to facilitate that. We want to grow these methodologies so that the people really do take ownership of governance. I hope that helps answer your questions around theory of impact.
I saw Mike had a question in chat. Can you run through your methodology for designing WeVal again? I couldn't catch it all.
Yeah, I didn't go too much into detail, but essentially, WeVal is platform and pipeline. The pipeline is uh, will identify a topic or a partner who is very interested in evaluating something. Let's just say, for example, because we did this recently, maternal health in India. And we will work with that partner to first identify experts in maternal health who are able to inform principles of an evaluation. Those principles are really the bedrock of what a WeVal is, right? It could be that you want AI to be trustworthy, sensible, sensitive, those are very broad, but usually they'll be very niche domain specific principles. Then you actually engage with the public. You ask everyday people or people more familiar with that domain questions around how what they want out of the AI. It's not just direct questions. They can be scenarios. There'll be trade-offs. Do you prefer this or this, or what would you sacrifice in order to have this? There'll be more indirect ways to solicit values from people. You can see a lot of those types of questions in our global dialogues work, which you can find on our website. But we will indirectly work with people to get those values. We'll also sometimes directly show them chatbot responses and ask them to use the principles to gauge whether or not the answer is accommodating for them and their culture and their values. Using all of that public input data, first from experts, then from the public, with additional validation mechanisms sprinkled throughout, we will come out with a rubric. CIP does most of this work, and we'll upload it to WeVal, where all of it is automatically run against foundational models. So you can see how over time and across models, AI in general performs against that specific niche topic. One example of this pipeline, besides India, in Sri Lanka, excuse me, we worked with several civil society organizations to create a Sri Lanka local elections evaluation in which they came up with the prompts that most people were asking right before their elections. And they came up with all the civil society who are really experts kind of in election integrity, in Sri Lankan history, in voter response. They came together to come up with criteria. They put it on our WeVal platform, and then they saw which models performed best and which performed poorly. I think they saw that Gemini performed much, much better than a lot of the other ones, which really informed how they used AI with that election. There's also blog posts on our Substack that go deeper into this.
Yeah, I guess maybe if you want to point me to that, because the follow-up question I have just quickly on that is like, what happens after the evaluations and what are some examples of ways that people have used these evaluations to make decisions, like whether to use this model, or whether to use it in this way or in this other way? Where can we, yeah, learn more about that?
Two questions there, right? One is what happens after the eval. This is still an open question for a lot of us because we are partner dependent in a lot of ways because we want to work with people in communities. So we always try to make sure that they have a way to close the loop before we start a project. Whether it's informing a local policy, whether it's actually working with an AI lab who is committed to integrating the results of the evaluation into their training of the next model iteration, we ensure that we have some sort of way to close the loop. In terms of where people can find stuff, our website has everything, but and Joel can link this. Our Substack also includes, a lot of detail about how we go about each of these projects. Everything from WeVal and Global Dialogues to our digital twin evaluation framework, which is still in development.
Cool. Yeah, Maria had a question about the digital twin stuff. Want to see, Maria, if you got an answer from Joel or if there was anything else you wanted to bring up and talk about with Faisal.
Yeah, thank you, Val. I think Joel answered it very well. Thank you.
And Maria, I highly recommend on our blog.cap.org, you'll see a post called Digital Twin Evaluation Framework that'll get much more into detail about it.
Cool. Yeah. So folks keep questions coming. But I have kind of a long question in here, but really it boils down to like, I mean, it started from your comment on like how countries want to sell parts of their stack to the rest of the world. And I guess it just made me think about like the evaluation layer. I feel like we're zoned in on that layer. What do some of the economic incentives look like at the evaluation layer? Who's working on this? Are there private companies? Y'all are a nonprofit? Are there governments? Like, yeah, can you speak to kind of how these different governance of these organizations doing work at the evaluation layer and who are the customers? Like, how do we sell evaluations? How are they being sold around the world?
Yeah, I can cover the governance part of this, but Joel, if you want to speak a little bit to the other side, please feel free to weigh in. I'll start by saying that a lot of the other eval players in this space, there is definitely a shift towards participatory methodology like ours. I'm going to Fact, and we put up this proposal for this type of pipeline, and we found a lot of other folks who are very interested in this type of work, which I think is great. But in terms of the organizations that are working on this, Humane Intelligence has just launched an evals ecosystem workshop coalition that we're all a part of. And their hope is to actually create a marketplace of evals and work with, superintendents, for example, hospitals, communities and smaller groups. So they're actually able to utilize these evaluations within their organization. So they're not really targeting frontier labs like we are, but instead local developers. And then in terms of other eval players, as I mentioned, governments are big into this because evals are informing a lot of how they're making policies. So we've been talking with a lot of folks within government about how to better streamline that. But in terms of the of selling evals, I mean, Joel, do you want to say anything there?
Yeah, I mean, we're not really. So I'll put on the camera here, so I'm speaking to people. We're not really necessarily in the business of selling evals, but I think there's just a different markets that exist here, and there's actually a very large market for organizations that sell like human expert data annotation, and these are things like Scale AI, Search AI, Handshake, Mercor. And they work very specifically on like contract basis with the labs. The labs just have the need for massive amounts of data to build custom evals for the purposes of their own post-training pipelines. You also have large like enterprise organizations and corporations that are trying to tailor artificial intelligence to their own context and needs and their own data. And so they need basically custom built evals to make sure that it works for their own context and use case. Oftentimes they will hire a consulting agency like a McKinsey type or another eval organization to build custom built ones. What we're doing is something a bit different, and one is opening up who gets to build the actual evaluations and what values get encoded in that, especially on contextual, socially valuable types of things, where what is right or wrong or considered good or bad is going to be contestable. And so figuring out the right way to find like the different contestable rubrics there is a big missing thing that is really difficult to do and not doesn't necessarily fit within a clear business model at the moment. Nonetheless, we think it is very important for society at large for more people to have inputs in these kind of discussions there. But
Cool.
yeah, I would love to chat about this at length. I think there's just a lot of more questions than answers in this right now. Particularly since this is still very much an art of people building out empirically through testing better ways to do evaluation, but there's not like a clear, rigorous science necessarily around it. Um, and making sure too that those capabilities and those methodologies are more broadly distributed as well across society, especially if evals are going to be a key modality of governance within AI. So I think yeah, this is if people want to think about this with us, my email is in the chat. So is Faisal's. We'd love to just brainstorm on this and help solve some problems.
Awesome. Definitely think some of us are interested. Any other questions? We've got 7 minutes left. Let's
I
take
think Maria
advantage.
had one in chat, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, I think we got to that one,
Oh, cool. Never mind.
unless I missed something. Open floor. Anyone take it?
Val, maybe I can quickly finish by saying what we're up to now, and if people want to follow our work. So, um, right now, a lot of our work is focused on bringing the next phase of Weval, uh, out. As you can see, Weval now, it works. It's very comprehensive, a ton of evaluations, but we really want to make it as make it fit, I guess, the use case of public benefit organizations, of civil society organizations, people who are, proxies for AI deployments within their communities. And so a lot of our partners right now who are working with us on these evals, they're experts in law and justice, they're experts in career navigation and education, and they're very helpful. They're not experts in AI or evals. We help facilitate that part. We want partners to be experts in what they're good at, right? All those domains. So that's kind of been our big focus at the moment. We're constantly putting out work on our Substack about, digital twins, multi-agent coordination. We're looking at, new ways to host deliberative sessions. So a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon for CIP. I hope you guys can subscribe to our blog, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us at CIP. It's just hi@cip.org. Um, yeah, I mean, we're really ramping up, I think, and I'm very, very excited to see what's coming.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. If no one has any further questions, I think people are probably just deep looking at the blog and kind of keep absorbing. I'm on Weval right now, so at least I know I am. So yeah, please also, Faisal, if you could send us your presentation. Usually we'll share the slides if you want to make them available to us so we can share it in Slack, and this recording will go up on our YouTube and Internet Archive databases. So thank you for that. And yeah, if no one has anything else, then let's close out with a round of applause for our guests. Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Joel. And everyone, please unmute and let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Woo! All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
Have a great
much.
day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.